Good afternoon, those here and those far and on the television. It is January 8th, and we are calling the study session meeting to order. Happy New Year. Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Carnevale?
Present.
Councilmember Lamb?
I'm sorry, she is not here and is excused.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregory?
Here.
Mayor Ross?
I'm here.
Can we take a vote on her absence?
Mayor Ross, may we take a vote on that?
We sure can. I don't know that we have to, but we can, yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to excuse the absence?
Absolutely. So I'll make a motion to formally excuse Councilmember Lamb from the January 8th study session and council
I'll
meeting.
second.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Carnevale?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregory?
Yes.
Mayor Ross?
Yes,
Motion carries all ayes. Thank you.
thanks. And we have an agenda finalization.
Mayor, I would like to report that we will not be needing to have the closed session item. That there's nothing to report on that one at this time. And the Sunline presentation, which is item 3A, will be deferred to a future meeting. The presenter is unable to be here due to illness.
Thank you. Thank you, but good times are coming. I see him already standing up there. You're pretty excited about this. Let's go.
Mayor Ross, apologies. We do need to do public
I'm sorry, I
comments
can't
first.
hear you, Kristen. I don't think your microphone's on.
Can you hear me? I will turn the
Yes.
volume up a little bit here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the statement of participation.
Of course.
Public comment is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are within the City Council's jurisdiction but not on the agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If you are a member of the public and you wish to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and submit it to the city clerk. You will be called upon at the appropriate time. If you have materials or other items to present to the members of the City Council, please do not approach them. All materials shall be presented to the city clerk for distribution. Mayor, we did not receive any request to speak forms. However, we did receive one written comment, and that is from Mr. David Kozlow, and it's requesting that the City Council agendize an item related to term limits for council members. It will be made part of the record, and it is available at the front for the public.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time in reading all of that. Our next is study session B. It's traffic calming policy and guidelines, January 2025 update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Our city engineer, Armando Baldizone, will present this item. This goes back to a strategic plan objective that you've had to develop guidelines, location-specific approaches to traffic calming in neighborhoods, and the engineering department has done that. And Armando's going to give you an update on some of the studies they've already done and how the policy will work. Armando?
Thank you.
Mr. Baldizone, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. Well, this is the update for the traffic calming policy and guidelines that, as it was mentioned before, is aligned with the 5-year strategic plans. Goal B, community investment, and the action B, that was a priority from the council members to develop a traffic calming plan with the strategies for addressing location-specific speeding issues. To do that, let's summarize the background of all this policy into a challenge, that is vehicles speeding in residential streets and neighborhoods. That's a challenge, and that was your priority, how we can reduce this, or how can we take over this challenge. To do that, the city staff created a traffic calming committee that it was created with different divisions and departments of the city. The purpose of the traffic calming committee was to procure temporary traffic calming equipment that was completed in 2024, and then create a temporary traffic calming process to evaluate speed on residential streets. I will refer to this temporary traffic calming process as the Part 8 investigation of the policy. The temporary traffic calming equipment that was procured last year include flashing regulatory speed signs, speed feedback signs, speed humps, and trailer. The implementation started in July 2024. 5 locations were evaluated due to resident complaints regarding speeding in their neighborhood, and based on these results and evaluation of the location and additional research that the engineering department did, city staff developed the traffic calming policies that we are presenting today. The traffic calming policies that you have in your package is a set of measures to improve neighborhood traffic safety and quality life throughout the roadway improvements. Traffic calming is not one thing, it's a process just trying to minimize negative impacts associated with neighborhood traffic on the residents, pedestrians, bicyclists, and school children. The purpose of the traffic calming measures have 2 categories. One is those devices that reduce the speed. The other one are devices that reduce traffic volume. The policy that you have in your attached to your report has goals, policy, objectives, and guidelines that are all aligned with the general plan, the circulation and mobility element, the active transportation plan that was adopted in 2023, 5-year strategic plan, and the guidelines are the standard guidelines that we use for the design of the streets for every project or development. The process and implementation. The process and implementation that we put together is to be used by city staff and residents that are trying to find traffic calming solutions within their neighborhoods. It is a 2-part process. The part A, we call it investigation, and that was the process that was established by the traffic committee, the temporary traffic control measures. And the part B is called actions or implementation. That is when we install permanent traffic control measures. Each part has a specific components, steps, and that should be considered through the development of the street traffic calming plan. Let's stop in part A, the investigation, or the investigation is for the implementation of traffic calming in residential streets, we need to meet 2 parameters. The parameter number 1 is to measure the 85th percentile traffic speed need to be higher than 35 miles per hour. The second parameter that need to be met is that 70% of the measured speed need to be over 25 miles per hour. One of or both of these parameters need to be met to proceed to the next step in the process. If the parameters are not met, the investigation is considered complete, and the request initiator will be informed of the results. The procedure for the investigation are 6 steps: identifying the streets. That identification can come from a resident, from a complaint to the police department, from calling the engineering department, from everywhere. It's going to get to the engineering department, and we will put the street in a list of streets, and we are going to go and do the study. The second step is to install a speed radar or a hidden radar where nobody knows that the speed is there, so we can take the measures of what's going on in the street. The third step is speed feedback signs, where we install the temporary speed feedback signs. Step 4 will be police and traffic enforcement plus the speed feedback signs. Step number 5 will be installing temporary speed humps. And step 6, that could vary according to the results, is a memorandum of findings and recommendations. The potential scenarios that you have in the memorandum could be that the issue investigated does not require traffic measures, and we will inform the request initiator, will be informed about the result. The second could be that the issue investigated warrant actions, but permanent constructed traffic calming devices may not be the most cost-effective solution. In that case, we'll implement the minimum solutions and we'll proceed with police enforcement. And the third is that the issue investigated warrant actions and installation of permanent traffic calming devices is the most appropriate action or solution. Based on the memorandum, memorandum's recommendations, the Director of Public Works may proceed with Part B of the process by using available budget funds and/or proceeding to secure approval of funds to implement the permanent traffic calming measures. So this is the Part B of the traffic calming policy or guidelines, that is the actions. So when we implement the traffic calming measures to become permanent. This part is long. It has three components. One is the city actions, then localized traffic calming measures, and then neighborhood traffic calming control plan. The city actions mainly are enforcement with temporary radar speed trailers, increase in police presence, traffic operations and maintenance, striping, signing, pavement markings, signal timing on arterials. These are lower cost to implement measures, and if funds are available, the potential funding sources are public works, operation and maintenance budget, assessment district funds, special contribution from council district improvement funds, and capital improvement funds if a project or funding is identified in the capital improvement plan. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to go back to those 5 locations that we studied since July of last year, because they include the Part A, that is the investigation, and the Part B actions with the city actions, what we are going to do in the future in those 5 streets. The 5 locations that we studied were 2 sections in Whispering Palms, Vega Road, Avenida Cimino, and Avenida del Yermo. Again, the parameters that we were checking was to measure the 85th percentile traffic speed being bigger than 35 miles per hour, and that 70% of the measured speeds are more than 25 miles per hour. The procedure, we have the 6 steps there. I highlighted the step 3 I highlighted because none of the 5 studies that we did, or the 5 investigations that we did, passed this step. To see that thing, the results are, first result that we have is Whispering Palm Trail between Ramon Road and Baristo Road. We did that in July of last year when we put the speed radar, the one that nobody knows that is there. The average speed was 20 miles per hour. The 85th percentile was 35 miles per hour, so it meets the first parameter, and the percentage of speeders was 73%, so it's above the 70% required for the parameter. As soon as we put the speed feedback signs, the average speed reduced to 25 miles per hour, the 85th percentile reduced from 35 to 30, and the percentage of speeders reduced from 73 to 49. So the recommended actions were to upgrade the 25 miles per hour speed signs with flashing speed limit signs, installation of speed feedback signs, and installation of centerline pavement striping for local residential roadways. The funding in this case is Whispering Palm, and it was identified in the capital improvement program with Whispering Palm Trails Class 3 bike route project from 30th Avenue to Dinah Shore. So the next step, because this was a project that it was identified, we are going to implement those recommended actions when the project is constructed. And the next step will be, when the project is constructed, go with police enforcement and see if the people continue speeding or not. The next one, another one in Whispering Palm Trail. Again, 2 steps we met when we put the speed radar. The average speed was 35 miles per hour, and when we put the speed feedback signs, it was reduced to 25. The same thing happened with the 85th percentile and the percentage of speeders. Same recommendations at the section before, because they are included in the same project. Avenida del Yermo, between McCallum and Vega Road, we put the speed radars. We have an average speed of 29 miles per hour. 85th percentile was 35, and the percentage of speeders was 74. As soon as we put the speed feedback signs, the average speed was reduced to 24 miles per hour, the 85th percentile was reduced to 30, and the percentage of speeders was reduced to 47. So the recommended actions were to upgrade 25 miles per hour speed signs with flashing speed limit signs, installation of a center line in the pavement, and the funding most likely is to be determined, but most likely will come from Public Works, Maintenance and Operations. And the next step will be police enforcement. The other two investigations that we did, one was in Vega and one was in Avenida Cimino. And as you can see, we cannot pass the step number 1 by putting the speed radars. The average speed was 25 miles per hour, the 85 percentile was 31, and the percentage of speeder was 50%. So it's below the parameters that we are checking, so we don't need to go to the step number 2, that is implementing temporary measures in the street. So with that being said, I'm going to go back to the procedure, the part B of the procedure, to the second component, that is the localized traffic calming control measures. When we call it localized traffic calming control measure, it's a localized issue that refers to a specific area, such as a street or a group of streets, where implementing traffic calming measures do not lead to spill over the effects on nearby streets. That could be an example, could be a speed on a collector leading from a subdivision to an arterial. To give you an example, in the city could be Ortega Road, just Ortega going from the residential areas into Taypal Drive. The process to evaluate the localized traffic calming control measures will be, the investigation will be the same as what we see in the process with the 6th step for investigation. Once the traffic calming measures are identified, it's going to be a consultation with affected entities, fire, police, transit, school districts, environmental services. The city then, after the consultation, the city circulates a petition to the residents on the affected streets, and at least 75% of the residents living in that street need to be in support of the proposed measures. Then we identify the funding sources. They are the same funding sources: Public Works, Operation and Maintenance, Assessment District Funds, a special contribution from Council District Improvement Funds, Capital Improvement Funds if the project or funding is identified in the Capital Improvement Program. When the plan is completed and funding is available, Council may be required to approve a contract to construct the measures, or to approve a task order to perform the improvements. Before the construction, the city will notify the public and affected entities. And the next part, that is the bigger part, is the part B of the part B, the permanent traffic control, is when an entire neighborhood is affected by traffic control. When is this? This is required when traffic calming treatment on one street. If we implement traffic calming treatment on one street, the result is that the challenge is moved to adjacent street or to a neighborhood. Like blocking a street, the traffic is going to go to the adjacent street, something like that. Once the issue is determined to be at the neighborhood scale, the city manager and the traffic calming committee will convene to evaluate the measures needed, including funding and staff resources. This is a big process, it's the biggest process, and this process has 3 steps. The plan development that starts once adequate staff resources and project funding are identified, a plan support that is to assess the neighborhood support to the proposed plan, and the plan implementation that start by looking for funding, where the city will look for grant, city contribution, or we can implement funding mechanisms like such an assessment district for the design and construction of the neighborhood traffic calming plan. These are the 3 big steps of the neighborhood traffic calming plan, and these are the list of steps that every one of the components has to be completed. So this will be a project that will be in the order to be implemented in the order of the 5-year range, from the development, from the investigation to the development, to the support, and to the plan implementation. Let's go to the design guidance that we use. Traffic calming, here we are presenting the traffic calming strategies that should be considered whenever there is a need to reduce vehicle speed on roadway or traffic volume on any street. Consideration should be given to the following areas: street or roadway segments with a high percentage of speed-related collisions, locations or facilities that generate high concentration of bicyclists and pedestrians, and to support transitions from high speed to low speed streets. Traffic calming measures may vary in range of control, impact, and cost. We have 4 categories of available options. Category 1 is what is called awareness measures. These are the awareness and safety that are the primary measures before trying to install any vertical or horizontal measure in the street. They are designed to induce the driver to change their behavior rather than include making modifications to the street configuration. The examples for these ones are center line, lane striping, lane and pavement markings with visual clues, warning sign, turn restrictions, and speed signs. Here are some examples. Road striping, this is in Dale Palm. The primary purpose is the speed reduction. This can be installed on residential, collector, and major arterials. Like in the policy and guidelines attached to the document, you have the advantage and disadvantages for road striping, warning signs. Again, the primary purpose is speed reductions, and a byproduct of the speed reduction is the other potential result is the pedestrian safety. It can be installed on residential, collector, and minor arterials. Turn restrictions, the primary purpose is volume reduction. Byproduct will be a speed reduction, and it can be installed in residential, collector, minor, and major arterials. Speed feedback signs, primary purpose speed reduction, again, residential, collector, minor, and major arterials. Other potential results will be the volume reduction. The second category that we have is the vertical deflection measures. These are physical design elements on the road that create a change in elevation, forcing drivers to slow down. Examples are speed bumps and cushions, speed tables, raised intersections, and raised crosswalks. The speed bumps, the primary purpose is speed reduction. Other potential results are volume reduction and collision reduction. The next one are speed cushions, same as speed bumps. Primary purpose, speed reduction. Other potential results are volume reduction and collision reduction. The speed tables, again, the same, can be primary purpose, speed reduction, and the byproducts, volume and collision reduction. Raised crosswalk, speed reduction, and the other potential results will be volume reduction and pedestrian safety, because it improves the visibility of the pedestrian crossing in the crosswalk. The third category are horizontal deflection measures. These are design elements that physically alter the path of the vehicles by creating slight curves and offset in the roadway, so forcing the drivers to slow down and navigate more carefully, like in a zigzag-like environment. These examples include curb extensions, raised median islands, traffic circles, and on-street parking. Example of that, this is the curb extension. The primary purpose is a speed reduction, can be done in residential, collector, or major arterials. The other potential results could be volume reduction, pedestrian safety, and collision reduction. And the next one doesn't want to come up. What happened? Raised median and pedestrian refuge. Primary purpose is speed reduction, can be done in residential, collector, and major arterials. Potential results are volume reduction and pedestrian safety. Traffic circles. The primary purpose, again, is speed reduction. Other potential result, volume reduction, pedestrian safety, and collision reduction. And the angle parking is the primary purpose is a speed reduction in the street. The last category that we have for the available option is what they call diversion structure, and these are design elements that divert the traffic from a particular direction or prevent the traffic to move through, to traveling through a certain point. The examples are a full or a partial road closure, a cul-de-sac, median barriers, right-in, right-out islands, and turning restrictions. So, this is an example of full or partial road closure. Primary purpose is to reduce volume, and other results are speed reduction, pedestrian safety, and collision reduction. The median barriers are volume reduction, again, the same other results, reduce speed, safety for pedestrians, and reduce the collisions. Right-in and right-out islands is like volume reduction and the same speed reduction, pedestrian safety, and collision reduction. The only disadvantage that these have is that large vehicles will have some trouble to make right turns. So just for another part of the guidance and policy is the guidelines and policies is that traffic calming has a trade-off. One of the trade-offs is the first one is the travel time impacts because it creates an inconvenience to the drivers that is necessary to improve the quality of the life in the neighborhood. The other is a conflict between two public safety goals. One public safety goal that is an important public safety objective is minimizing emergency response time, and the other public safety goals that we have is reducing speed on residential streets. So both are public safety goals that goes against each other, or that they are pros and cons. Another traffic calming trade-off is the noise that they are going to create. So just go against or to maintain we need to try to maintain the environmental quality of the residential area. And the last trade-off is a street diversion, that speed reducing device may cause traffic to take on another street. And so that's conclude my report. Staff is presenting this update on the traffic calming policy and guidelines to the City Council for discussion, comments, recommendations to prepare for adoption at a later date. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know we have some questions. We have, Councilmember Gregory has a question or more. I just couldn't find you because you weren't there.
Hello, Armando. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thanks to you and the committee for all the work that's been done. From where we were with no real answer to the public when they came to us with these issues, other than, well, we'll look into it and we'll put a radar, but then no real process as to what to do when that came back, other than maybe suggest that somehow neighbors collect money for speed humps or that kind of thing. This is a long ways from that. So you kind of started from scratch from what we had before. So I do appreciate what's going on here. So, and I do appreciate, of course, the 5 studies that you've already done. And I think that they are good examples of when someone comes, sometimes they've got the facts do equal what they said, as far as there's a lot of speeding on the road, and sometimes it's just really not as bad as what they said. I think probably those of us, since we're all residents here of the city, all have some stories about when somebody sped on our street, or that it happens from time to time. But certainly some are more serious than others, and some are more frequent than others. So I do like this scientific process, and I think this is very important for us to follow. One thing, though, that I don't see in here, and there may not be, it may be because it's not totally definable, but is a goal towards a time when issues are discovered and when they may be resolved. And I know funding is a big part of that. But for example, one of the segments that you showed us of the 5, the study was done in July, and right now it's January. And so the study in July showed that there is an issue on that street, and there's recommendations to mitigate those. And I think, you know, that street in particular is tied to a project that we have some funding for. But that project for a while was shelved because we were getting reports that it was just, we were waiting to have enough staff time to move it forward. So it is moving forward now, but there were months and months where the report the council was getting is it's there, and we'll get started on it, but we can't get started on it yet because we're working on other projects, which is understandable. But there's the other side argument on the other side of that is when we identify an issue, don't we need to have some urgency to try to address that issue? So I don't know if you're, I'm not criticizing anything that's been done. You're starting a new process. That study was done in July. It's January. And there's a project now that's slowly moving forward because it's in the design phase that will answer that. But I think from the public's point of view, there could be an argument as to, well, why isn't there any urgency, or what is the goal, at least, when we identify an issue? And so the Whispering Palms, the 2 segments that have been identified, those are in a project. Again, that's a project I'm saying was, we got notice that they were approved a while back, but then they waited in line, and that's life sometimes. But now we have the Del Yermo also that's on there. And that study was done a little later, but you still are probably 3 or 4 months into that. And we're not just now saying we're going to have to identify funding. So I guess my question is there a goal as to when we move forward on these? Or are they always going to be, well, we identify them and it might take a long time to even move forward on the ones that are the lower? You spoke about how some of them potentially are going to be more involved and may involve bigger projects or more than one street, or at the ultimate, a whole neighborhood. So those, of course, would take longer, and you said those could actually take years. But is it the intention of the policy that even those larger ones, that there wouldn't be any intermediate steps, or we just have to, even though we identify a problem, we just have to continue to wait a long time?
No, the intention of the policy is for those that the city actions, the first step that I said, city actions, these need to be immediately assessed. Okay, this is a process that we start in July. We put the committee together, we implement all the things, we implement the process and everything, and we need to, align the things that were not working. No, the city actions will be implemented immediately after the recommendation, and the Director of Public Works will receive the memorandum with the findings, and he will say, okay, there is funding available in Public Works. We don't have funding available right now in the Capital Improvement Program or in the Capital Improvement Plan. Probably it's going to be an idea to put one line for traffic calming and put some funding there to assess these immediate or city actions, the ones that are at low cost, painting a center line, replacing the 25 miles per hour signs, those ones are immediate actions. The localized, when we found that the street needs some traffic calming measures, we need to address, the recommendation is, okay, 75% of the residents on that street need to be in approving what is going to happen in their street. And for the neighborhood one, if the measures happen in an intersection, we are going to request that 75% of the people living, if I am not wrong, 150 feet from that intersection in every direction, approve the measures, and then we go to the neighborhood that is going to be affected. So yes, the implementation, you're totally right. As of today, we didn't have the only thing that we have was Whispering Palm project that was delayed because we approved that project was awarded to us on 2023, and then it came the tropical storm, so we have to adjust all the capital improvement plans to address the tropical storm projects. So that's why it was delayed, and that's why probably I take responsibility, because I was saying, we have a project here. I am not going to spend money in putting something
And you understand,
there.
I'm not trying, and I don't think the
No, no.
council would assess blame there, but I do appreciate the explanation. But it's just as a good example, with having a plan without some type of a goal or a process to move them forward once they're identified, I'm wondering whether something needs to be either part of the plan or at least identified as a practice. I won't say policy because it doesn't necessarily have to be written, but a practice when the initial speed study is done, if there's a goal as to, well, what steps do we take other than just identifying them to move them forward?
The goal was that one. That's why I separated in 3 different categories, the part B of the process. If it is implementing by simple solutions, we can immediately adopt it. If it is more, requires more outreach, it's going to take some time. That's it.
Okay. So as you do, in the future, as you do these initial studies, like you did the 5, and they're complete, is the council, at what point would the council receive some type of notification that the study was done? And what the results were?
You can receive it on the weekly or on the monthly updates.
All right. Well, I would request that become our policy, that we do that, because that does place some onus on us. I mean, we are in districts, so if you do a speed study, it's going to be probably most likely in one of our districts. It possibly could cross over into to more than one, or a traffic calming study. I don't want to call it a speed study, a traffic calming study. And but we're also all represent the city, so I think all of us would be interested in those as they come up. And then, in particular, if one of the district representatives sees that, there are options on there that you presented. I thought that was good. Again, very well thought out, of using, district improvement plan funds. Or frankly, we could, if we thought it was urgent enough, we could come back to the council through the city manager, and we could ask for something to be agendized, or even at the end of our meetings, to try to, if it was something that was urgent enough, that out of cycle, even have some funding dedicated to that type of a thing. But if you do the studies and the council doesn't know about them, my only worry is that, okay, we did a study and it fell through the cracks. I mean, you may have it on one of your lists, but the council may not know about it, and so we're not able to initiate those other actions that we may desire to do. And taking something out of process and asking for an additional CIP funding or something out of the budget cycle, I would think would be unusual. And usually those type of things are being identified for grant funding for maybe pedestrian safety or those types of things anyways. But, I do think that it's important that with all this work that you've done and this really good plan, I mean, I'm really impressed. Like I said, I'm impressed with everyone that contributed to put this together, that we make sure that we have good notice to council. So the monkey comes somewhat off your back also onto us, because if we're notified that, hey, the study shows that there needs to be some work here, and we, decide, well, we're just not going to move forward, then it is on us. There could be reasons, like you said, where you have other priorities that are being done, but at least it will be done with full knowledge.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your presentation. It's nice to hear that you have come up with some sort of policy. I think it's very detailed, and might be a little too detailed. And some of the questions that I do have are, is there a reason why residents who live in those affected areas of speeding vehicles are not invited or will not be invited to be a part of that particular committee to study that area?
Can you repeat the question, because
Yeah, you have a committee, to study such areas that are affected by speeding
Yes, the
vehicles.
traffic committee, yes.
And in there, you have various employees from different departments.
Correct.
Now, is there a reason why we cannot invite a resident from a particular neighborhood or street that is affected to also be a part of that committee to give their input since they live in the middle
Okay.
of the problem?
No, there's no reason. It's like we need to do the investigation like we did in Whispering Palms in the two segments, like we did in Vega, and like we did in the other one that we did the investigation and probably, like it was mentioned a few minutes ago, probably the speeding was somebody speeding that day, and then when we do the investigations, our parameters are normal and standards. So if the investigation, I think that if the investigation requires and gets to the results that traffic calming measures need to be implemented, the result is going to be submitted to the request initiator, and then we are going to invite the public to do it. But first of all, we need to investigate. I don't want to be in front of residents telling, let us investigate and then tell us what you know about that thing.
Councilman Gutierrez, I was just kind of curious, were you asking Armando if a resident can be brought in for their wants and concerns and what they think they need out there, not how to fix it, but what they see rolling stop signs or speeders? What information would you expect from the resident?
You are correct. I just wanted them to give their own personal knowledge and input when the study is being conducted. That way, certain things that, for instance, we have a lot of employees that do not live in the city or within that immediate area that is impacted, because, of course, not every employee that is in the committee can live in every affected street. So I was just wondering if we can try to implement and get a resident from the affected street or
I
area.
will recommend.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm confused too,
I'm
because you get the input from the residents, and the committee takes that, and that's when they decide we're going to study a segment. So the study is scientific. It's numbers. It's data. It's not emotional. It's not mine, a story about how, somebody almost got hit or something like that. That might lead to the segment getting studied. But when you actually have said, okay, we're going to study the segment, then it's scientific. It's what does the speed thing show? And that's what we want. We don't, because at that point we're trying to say, yes, the data confirms what we're hearing, or the data does not confirm what we're hearing. So why would a citizen being there, that would just gum up the process, because the committee's not making judgment calls on anything except the data that's being collected.
Facts.
Correct. The more public knowledge about what we're doing taints the information we're going to get. And that's why even when we get a phone call, we take it in and we say, you're in the queue. We don't tell them when it's going to go out there because we don't want them to know. They could be a speeder. We want it to be independent. We don't send the police out there to start the enforcement. We want to get that organic information that isn't tainted. They didn't know when it's set up. They don't even know where the radar boxes are. And from the radar boxes, we can tell basically every vehicle that goes by at the time, location, and the speed of that vehicle in both directions, what the information is. Then we analyze it. And as Armando stated, when we get to, if there's bigger things that have to happen in the neighborhood, that's when we engage the neighborhood saying, we did this investigation and you need speed humps. Do you realize what effect in the neighborhood? Because speed hump in a neighborhood is going to distort 2 or 3 or 4 residences' driveways and eliminate some of their parking. So those challenges are kind of down the road. We analyze it. And the reason we hadn't done some knee-jerk reaction in getting implementation of this is Armando's been working to get this thing all fine-tuned and everything. Every one of those steps he had takes about 2 weeks. So it wasn't in July we got the information. It was initiated over 2 weeks. So you go to step A, it's 2 weeks. Then you go to the next step, it's another 2 weeks. Then the next step, another 2 weeks. So some of those investigations, when you're at 5 steps, you're already at 10 weeks. So until we get another trailer, which we'll look at in a few years, there is the process, and successfully he's demonstrated that there hasn't been anything drastic that need to be real quick and done. So now that we know what we're seeing, the signs that he's recommending, we know what to put in the budget for Public Works maintenance budget for additional radar signs. You know, they're about $5,000 each, but, you know, right here is $20,000 to $30,000 worth of signs times 2 because you have it both sides of the street. There could be 60,000, so we wanted to get your blessing, see that, know that there will be line items in the budget in both Public Works and could be in engineering's budget to be able to implement these things as kind of a bogey, as needed, that we can react to it. So Armando's done a really good job. It's taken a long time to get here. He's researched and called other cities on what they do. And so I think the document it is a little detailed and complicated, but it's very step by step, and it protects the city because what we put in, we got to stand by.
So again, let me just, to that respond, yeah, I was not criticizing but I was saying there needs to be an element going forward as to a process so that enough people are notified that can actually move it forward. So, but I will, if I can piggyback, what I hear from here is to get a street segment studied, that part's not in here, or at least I didn't see it. How do you identify what street segment needs to be studied? You said, well, you take in complaints from the public.
When we are taking, I probably didn't put it in the policy, but when we receive a complaint from a resident, the first things that we do is we look at the suitors, and if we don't have any information from suitors, we contact the police department, and the first reason to evaluate the street that we are receiving complaints is collisions or accidents in that street. Mm-hmm. If the street has collisions or accidents, then that will prioritize that resident calling and saying, hey, I have a speed problem in my street. If there is no collision and we put it in the list and we check if it is a major arterial collector, there are other points that can move the resident's complaint to the top according to collisions or importance of the street within the city.
I think we appreciate the council member's comments but I think that's the segment that maybe he is referring to ensure that we get good public. If there's a process that we can put in place, make sure we get the full feedback, not just somebody called staff and somebody answered and said, okay, yeah, they're speeding on the street. If there was a process where if somebody had knowledge about issues on the street, how would they call? Could you set up, and I'm just brainstorming, but could you set up a special email address if they want to send something, or have a person that they send it to, or this type of thing? So it's not just, well, call City Hall and hopefully that you can get the right person on the phone and they'll mark down that you have a speeding issue, or call your council member and hopefully your council member isn't too busy right then and passes it along, that type of a thing. So I'm just throwing that out. I don't know if that's what you meant, council member.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was talking about.
Bringing it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about, because if we let the public know that we're doing this and also get them engaged, maybe not during the investigation process, but right after, to let them know.
Okay. That's in the process. That will be not the city actions only, because in the city actions, if they are low-cost measures, we are going to send the results to the requester, the person that initiated the comment, and we are going to install the measures. If it is a localized or a neighborhood, that's when public gets involved. In the investigation portion, I wouldn't recommend to have the public involved.
Okay. Now, a few other comments or questions is the temporary speed humps, were they installed or they're just part of the policy?
We never use it yet.
Oh, okay. Now, you say you have a two-part process. I was thinking about a third one. I don't know if it would be possible or not, or if you thought about it, but the third would be after Plan A or process A and B, Part A and B have been completed. C, if will be, are you going to study the results afterwards to make
They
sure that
are-
what
they
we
are-
implemented is working?
In the policy, and I think in the policy and the neighborhood traffic calm plan, there is the last section that it says that when you do the traffic, we complete the construction of the traffic, there is the step to study what are the results of that, if the traffic measure was correct, or if we need more traffic measure, yes.
Yeah,
There
thank
is that thing.
Great. Now, my next question is, you need to have certain agencies approve once you jump to Part 2 or B, to actually implement plans and start working on it, doing the investigation. You need to have certain agencies or departments approve that. For instance, the fire department, school district, police department, all those.
Yeah.
Now, in certain areas, I don't know if it's necessary to let certain agencies like the school district know about it and to make sure that we get clearance from them, because that might delay the process. For instance, if you do West Spring Palms or Eximino or Del Yermo in my district, the school district, I don't think it was necessary to have them approve the process of what we're doing, because this is not near the schools.
Correct, but when I referred in the policy as affected agencies, it's like if the agency is affected, it's going to be informed. Even if it's not affected, it's going to be informed to know that we are doing, is kind of working with other agencies together, like environmental services, like the fire department, like the police department. We're going to tell them that, hey, we're having a project here. It's going to have some changes in the configuration of the street. Give us your feedback.
Okay.
That's the consultation with other agencies.
Okay. Now, the fire department, if they do not approve the process from what I read is dead, canceled. It cannot continue. Is that correct?
That's a priority. Like I mentioned, there is one of the trade-offs to installing traffic calming measures. What is the priority on public safety that you're trying to look for?
Yeah, one of my concerns there is also that if there was an emergency call and the fire department and ambulance needed to be called, it might be to one of those streets in which a speeder actually ran over somebody or got into an accident, killed somebody. So that's one of the reasons why it's a little tricky to, of course, there's pros and cons.
The research that we did is like every time a speed hump or a speed bump is installed in a street, there is a 7 to 10 seconds delay in the emergency response. So even when you put the speed humps that are separated in the middle just to allow the fire engine to go through, okay? Well, the ambulance is smaller and will hit the hump. Correct. So the reduction in time of response is 7 to 10 seconds per speed hump when they are going into an emergency. So that's why I mentioned the trade-off is that conflict between these two public, what did I say? I don't remember anymore.
The process.
No, these two public safety objectives or public safety goals from the city.
Yeah. Now, the 75% response, sometimes I consider that to be a little too high. Is that what other cities use? Because
I researched Palm Desert when they did the San Pablo streetscape, that they reduced San Pablo from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and they put 12-foot sidewalks, angle parking, bike lanes, roundabouts, speed bumps, crossing, race crossings. And their project started in 2015. It was constructed in 2 different phases, and I think they have 95% of response from the residents that they were in favor of the project. But the only difference is, like San Pablo streetscape was done in a not in a residential area, was done in a commercial area, and then the second step is on parks, and in the other side is the library of Palm Desert. So they don't affect residential areas around the San Pablo area.
Yeah, I think the 75% response back from residents might be a little too high, because if you have, for instance...
Is 75% response from the residents that are affected. So if it is a street from corner to corner, all those residents are the ones that are... If it is a neighborhood one, we need to have the 75% of that street. But then, if you see, there is another rate that I implemented there in the condition, that the entire neighborhood is going to be sent a ballot, and from there, only 30% of the ballot need to be collected back, and 50% plus 1 need to be in favor of the thing.
Yeah, I did read that. Now, when you talk about residents, are you talking about the occupants of the property, or is this going to be sent to the owners of the property?
We mail, every time that we mail something from engineering is to the owner and to the residents,
Okay.
to the people that is living there. So we do 2 kind of mailings. One with the property owner, letting know that in the street that they have the house, something is going to happen. The other one is we do a mailing by address, where we send it to the address and we inform the residents what's going on. So that's what we usually do when we do a project and we want to affect residents to get into the house.
Is it possible to add something in there that reads resident and or occupant? Because
Not a problem, I can put that thing in there.
Yeah, because that makes a big difference, because otherwise, if you're a tenant, you will never hear about it, even though they've been there for years on the property, because the owner of
Okay.
the property is the one that received the mail. So the
Okay.
tenant will never be,
Yeah, I can put occupant.
okay, yeah, thank you. And let's see if I have any other ones. I have plenty more, but I'll let other council members ask questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Carnevale, please.
Thank you. You didn't have to hurry on my account. But Armando, that was a great presentation. It looks like all these calming devices, each one of the mechanisms seems to work and has some way to slow cars down. But basically, I was going to talk about the traffic humps. I'm not a big fan of them. I think they do damage to cars, bicycles, or what have you. I'm just not really, and noise. I mean, I can understand the fire department, police department might take a little off that. That's very important too. But, with a lot of trucks now in the area and in residential areas, it could be like a real noise problem there. So I would just like to see, possibly look at a different direction instead of using those humps. And, that's the only part I have to say. I used to go to Lake Havasu a lot, and they would put ghost police cars out there in highly areas that were speeders on the highway there going into town, and you'd be going in there really barreling down, then you see that ghost car, police car, and man, you slam on the brakes, and it was a deterrent. I thought that was a pretty inexpensive way to go too. I don't want to throw that in there. But have you ever seen that done before, or has it been
Do
done?
you have any spare car that we can start putting this?
Anyway, that's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Councilmember Gutierrez has one
Yes.
last question.
One more question. This is, I believe, is reference to one of the questions that was asked by Councilmember Gregory here. Now, the whole process from starting to getting a request to getting it, if it's an actual valid request, to getting the investigation completed, and or if it is a valid one, to get whatever measures we need to do. What is the process going to be? Do you have a timeline? Is this going to take months, years? What is it going to, do you have a
The
timeline?
investigation, as was mentioned before, goes from 8 weeks to 12 weeks, the investigation. At the moment that we decide that there is a measure that we need to be implemented, we can identify the funding, we can identify the resources that we have, and we can move forward with the process of localize our neighborhood area. But until we don't get to that point, and the measures like localized measures or neighborhood area measures, neighborhood area, as I mentioned, it could be a 5-year project. The localized is going to be less. I will hope for the minimum to be a 1-year project, because it's going to be modifications on the street. Probably there's not going to be speed humps. Probably the recommendation is to put a curb extension at the intersection, so you reduce the section just to get into the street. Okay, there are different ways to try to change the behavior of the drivers that are speeding in residential areas. So there's no one solution that is the best for all. There are different solutions. So that's the point. We need some time to understand what we are doing and what we are affecting and what we need to, what will be the balance between providing to the residents what we want and not sending the traffic in that street, spill it over to another street. So now I don't have this street complaining about speeders, I have the street that is adjacent complaining about speeders. So it is a process. What we are trying to balance is the quality of life and the reduction of speeds in residential streets.
No, thank you. It's a very well-written policy. Just, I don't want to make it too difficult for people to actually complain. Okay. But thank you.
Mr. Baldessari, Mr. Baldessari and Director Corrella, it shows the depth of your interest as far as what you've provided us today. It's very encompassing. I thought it was interesting. I don't say that a lot about engineering stuff, John, no offense.
No, we are not.
But I did. I found it interesting, and I thought to myself that I could see that this wasn't the final outcome. This was an evolution, and this is what you've done to this point, that you've gotten us to where we might make some strides out there and try a few things and be willing to make changes if we need to along the way. So I appreciate that, both as a government, who sometimes does, not ours, but some governments don't have the ability to be as fluid as that. And I appreciate that you are, and I appreciate all the time you spent with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And just in summary, if I may, Mayor, we will start putting the results of the speed studies when they're done in the weekly reports so that you're aware of that. And I think as the budget process comes along, I think the suggestion to consider, if to the extent that we're able, putting a line item in the capital plan to allow some funding for some miscellaneous traffic calming projects probably is something that we'll bring to your attention for consideration as well.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment?
Mayor, we do not have any requests to speak at this time.
Thank you so much. And so this was for presentation only, and I can see our next renowned speaker moving his way forward so that we are going to have a master plan update. City Manager?
Yes, this is going to be Kevin Biersack, your Financial Services Director, and this is one that I'm sure he was moving forward so that he didn't get bumped again, because this was on your agenda originally in December, and we didn't have time to get to it. This is follow-up to an item that was presented to you several months ago, and it's really kind of an update to tell you what's been done so far, what's in process now, and what's going to have to be part of the budget.
Thank you,
moving
Mr.
forward.
City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. This is a riveting conversation. So for as interesting as the last one was, I don't know that we'll be able to quite hit that bar, but we will try.
You give it a try, buddy.
So as the city manager said, it's a master plan update. The first few slides you've seen, and it's really for the listening public to be able to see that we've been to you a few times. So as usual, ask any questions as we go along or save till the end, please. So dating back to January of 2022 in our annual goal planning and goal setting session workshop, this was established as a priority to do a facilities master plan. The following month, you adopted the resolution to memorialize the priorities from that planning session. Later that year, in October, we brought to you a contract for your approval with Mass Companies to complete phase 1 of the facilities master plan. Then 4 short months later, you approved a budget amendment because they were Speedy Gonzalez, and they actually finished the majority of that master plan in that fiscal year because it was originally planned to be done over a year and a half period. They delivered the report in July of 23 at the beginning of the new fiscal year, and then they delivered the facilities master plan phase 1 final report. In this past February, we came to you and we gave you an update of, so we haven't been to you since, with respect to the update of the phase 1 report, and tied to that, we identified the items with our current staffing or existing budget or third-party vendors and what we would need to do with respect to that. Eddie Moore, our facilities manager, is here this afternoon. Rick Vogt, who's one of our analysts, he worked with Eddie along with Mallory and Anthony, who support facilities. And so what you see here is we've identified dollars in the coming slides and what's been done and what is proposed to be done. As you remember, there were 18 items that were identified in the facilities master plan, one of which was poor, that being the Fountain of Life, and that's been rejuvenated. 4 items that are fair, and the rest that were identified as good in that plan. In total, for the 30 items, it was almost $3.3 million that was identified in deferred maintenance, one of which is like $2.6 million. So when you take that puppy out, we're looking at about $600,000 to $700,000 for the remaining 29 items. And the items are listed here. Number. One of the big things that happened, if you remember also this past year, one of the things that was in that 20-page report, it identified we needed more workers. And so this year we actually traded in a supervisory position for 2 worker bees, one of which a maintenance technician that started in September, and another one we're in the background mode, and we anticipate the potential for that second one to be able to start come the end of January. So instead of a staff of 3, Eddie and 2 others, it's Eddie, will hopefully be Eddie and 3 others this year. Also in that report was identified a maintenance technician 2, of which we have 1 today, and that's Roberto Ambrose. So he's one of our folks now already. But we do have 2 new positions. Those 30 items, in the following slides, we're going to show you the status, those items that have been completed with the actual cost, and then for those items that, whether it's existing budget that we accomplish it with, meaning this fiscal year, tied to that plan, or future budget items, which I believe there's less than a third of them, about 8 of them, that we will plan to include in the upcoming biennial budget. Fountain of Life. The 3 items there, and that, if you remember, that was the one that was the lone soldier that was poor. Those 3 items are completed. Just as a side note, some of the things that we've done with respect to the town square, this year we've also painted benches. We've also painted the pergolas because they were kind of getting nasty and everything. And we went with the green that complements the fencing around City Hall. We went with that Forest Kelly green kind of thing. And we're in green. Public Works Building, we have a number of items here with respect to life, and you can see the items that we are accomplishing in our existing budget or are completed. And there's only 1 item, and that's the abandoned generator that's a future budget item that we plan on including in the next biennial budget. The parking structure, and this is where that big ticket item is, and it's the last item. And what's noteworthy about that item, that when we actually go, and we've done some initial analysis, but when we actually, if we go out for an RFP, with respect to that, we anticipate if the bread box is as big as they had anticipated when Mass Companies and their subcontractor did the work, we would potentially be leveraging the facilities fund, which is an internal service fund, not the general fund. So more to come on that for this next fiscal year with respect to that. But you can see the other items that are identified as future budget. There are 4 items listed, and there's 2 that are being done this year, but have not yet been completed. The bell tower, future budget item. The library, all the items in the library that were identified have been completed. Fire Station 413 and the commercial building, both items have been completed, and there was no additional cost. For the admin side of the central fire station, Fire Station 410, an item in this year's existing budget. Panorama Park restrooms and storage, this year's existing budget. For Fire Station 412, the other side of the central fire station, the active side, 3 items for the evaporative cooler, and it's anticipated we will have those completed this year before the warm season. The Civic Center, both items were completed. One, ironically, was completed in the previous fiscal year, and it was in that report, but we did do it in that previous fiscal year. And another item that there was no additional cost. So all in all, when you look at the numbers, 12 items have been completed. 10 items, the plan and the goal is to have those items finished by the end of June. And then the 8 remaining items with respect to the future. Dollar-wise, if you look at the same thing from a dollar standpoint, what we've completed is about almost $225,000. Remaining in this year's budget, existing, $52,000 and change. And then the future items for those 8 items at almost $3 million, of which the 2.6, as we discussed, would not be a general fund impact. So when you look at the future items and you look at and everything that was all said and done, $406,000 out of the general fund. So this is a nice fancy slide, not compliments of me, compliments of Rick. The original estimate was 3.2 million. So the current estimate of the dollars where we're standing at is just a little bit shy of that. Completed versus existing budget and future budget. And of the future budget, you can see we anticipate in the next biennial budget including $350,000 in change from the general fund and the 2.6 in the proprietary fund, the facilities fund. Our 5-year strategic plan, goal B, our objective, our action item. Any questions? I see none.
I know I will. I know they're requesting as we talk. No, you're all good?
I have a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
I just could not get to the screen. Hello, Kevin.
Hi,
My
how are you,
question
sir?
is, regarding the parking structure, are we going to get maybe a second opinion as to what needs to be done?
That's what Eddie's been doing right now. He's talking to more than one, just to tie back to, and in the details of it, it ties back to up on the 3rd floor and then some stairwells. And so, yes, he's talking to different people.
Okay, that's great, because I just want to make sure that we are doing the right thing.
And when we get there, once we actually define, we would then go out because of the dollar amount, and obviously it's above $75,000, and we will go out formally.
Okay, great. Well, thank
We
you.
would just
That
don't
was-
take someone's word for it.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councilmember
sir.
Gregory.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thanks
You're
for moving
quite
this
welcome.
forward. It's great to have a plan and to make sure that we're looking forward to to take care of items we need to. So there's just a couple of items that I know I don't see on here. So are these just ones that the Moss companies identified?
Correct. These are purely the items that were from that deliverable.
Okay, because I mean, one I know that it's been, I don't know where it is in the process because I know it's gone forward and then moved back a couple of times, is like a fence at the Public Works building. I don't see that on here.
So the intention, when that was, from a previous council meeting, when that was delayed, the intention is to include that in the upcoming biennial budget process. And right now where that stands, call it $400,000 with the contingency. 50% general fund and 50% from the environmental fund.
Okay.
With respect to that for the
But
fencing.
normally, we're looking at the future on a list like this, so is there some point projects like that get added on to this? So have a very comprehensive list, or will we always have this list and then other
So
ones?
in a couple weeks, I'll explain more, but I'll be happy to tie back to our process that we'll be implementing this year, sir, with respect to budgeting, is we're actually going to be leveraging Tyler Munis a little bit more. So in that regard, we have tied back to, and this was established when we first implemented the ERP, there's 5 different levels that you can have from a budgeting standpoint. So we're going to start with the basics, and then, for example, that's level 1. Then we will get to a level 2, which is where we will go to the departments and the divisions, and they will provide inputs. So in this example, Eddie will provide the inputs with respect to those kinds of things, and then we will detail and hopefully do a better job than we've done in years past with respect to those old-fashioned workbooks that we've provided you in the past, to have the description and the justification of what we're actually doing for those kind of one-time repairs and those kinds of things, just so that you can see the detail. Level 3 is then the financial services coupled with the city management review in concert with the departments and divisions, should there be any questions and that type of thing. Level 4 is when we come to you in April with a proposed budget. And level 5 is, the good Lord willing, you agree to the proposed budget and we will have an adopted budget. And when we do that, by using the system, because we've in the past used the month of July to load our budget, it will be there. So when we do our June 30th roll, in theory, the concept is that budget will be there 1 July in the new year while we're still working on the old year, and we won't have to go through the rigmarole of what we've had to do in the past to upload the budget.
So the items that are on this list that are identified for future, they'll be put on there, and then any others.
And then any others.
Like the fence, and, I was going to ask about the elevator, but that got approved, but it doesn't show here on this list. For
Another good example, one of the things that our friends over across the Paseo have tied back to is in the parking structure, we have green fencing. And Eddie has been successful, ironically, not as successful as we would have hoped, with getting more people to come out and look at it. And people are really busy. It ties back to, but he's received a couple of informal bids with respect to if we would go all the way with the green fencing all the way to the end of the parking structure, whether just up at the top or both levels, meaning the first floor and the second floor. And it's expensive, that's a venture, but we'll have a placeholder in there with respect to it so that we can at least identify. So in that, when I was talking about the 5 levels, that would be a level 2 item
Okay.
that hopefully you'll see in level 3.
All right, good, very good. And you're saying that the fencing around the Fountain of Life did get painted here recently? Or?
The fencing around the Fountain of Life, we just with everything and all and paint and fading, we've kept that, but the pergola, so that's still the pergolas that were like a burgundy that were peeling. And I have 4 nice little pictures on my desktop that I can look at all 4 angles from those 8 pergolas. They were nasty.
All right, so they got painted, but the fence has not been
The
painted.
fence did not, but the
I know we had
pergolas
hoped
did.
it would remain silver and that we wouldn't have to paint it. I remember that. But
And Eddie is happy
but it's
about that
not.
because of the way that painting fades and
Yeah.
this galvanizing. And one of our Achilles heels are these purple lampshades.
Yes,
They're a
yes,
tough
yes.
nut. So
Yes.
in the end, we might get sandpaper and we might go out there and we'll welcome you all, like, you know how we paint the crosswalks? We'll have volunteers to maybe get those back to the original.
All right, but what I was asking was the fence around the
No,
fountain.
we're not going to paint it.
We're not going to paint it. Okay, because the council approved to paint it. In fact, we had great debate about the color, if you remember, which was kind of silly, in my opinion. But we did decide on the green, but then when it got installed, it didn't get painted. I was told because it looked nice and silver, and we had hoped it would stay that way, but what's happened is it did not. It has oxidized. So now it looks industrial gray.
And we're cleaning it as much more often with respect to it. When I say we're not painting, we've just put that off because what we did was the contra, we painted the pergolas because those were peeling.
Okay. All right, so if we want to have that painted, we're going to have to include that as a future budget item because it got taken off of the one we approved.
Yes and no, but based on the painting of what that would be, we include a certain amount in regular maintenance and ops.
Right.
And something like that, that we know that we have a certain bogey every year, we would probably include that in, so we wouldn't see that as a
Okay.
budget adjustment.
All right, I don't want to bog down this discussion. Maybe something we can have with the city manager. I know at least one other council member has also noticed that it didn't stay shiny anymore, and so probably,
And it was tied to a summer thing, and we just had done some, it wasn't best to paint it in the summer, and then when we got to the fall and everything, what I understood internally was that we were happy with the way that it was, that metal. And so, but to counterbalance it, we knew we had to do something with the pergolas.
right, I got you. I think we were okay with it when it was shiny, but it's not anymore. But again, I'll talk to the city manager about it, and maybe
Okay.
the council will too. Thank you.
One quick question, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
On the Fountain of Life, was it necessary to put that rubber pavement down?
We concreted,
You went over it, so that's not a rubber?
yes, because that was a 2 to 3 year type thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we used our concrete vendor, Desert Ants, and we utilized them, and we ended up doing concrete. Now, separate from that, we have an initiative that we are also working with them this year because we have trips and falls out in the town square. And from a risk management standpoint tied to that, we've identified areas, and Eddie's been working with Desert Ants to identify different areas there. As well, on the backside, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but on the backside, when you come in from the back parking lot and you come in, there's raised concrete on both the city hall side, but even worse over on the public safety side where the green fencing is. And so we're looking at, because those are potential trips and falls. So we're looking at, out of the existing monies that we have, not to come forth and ask for additional monies. And that would be tied to some of the things we talk about. We have a certain amount that we know we plan on doing every year. So we're actually looking at fixing some of that kind of concrete too.
Thank you.
It has not fallen on deaf ears how many times you've said we don't need to come to you with any money. And I have to tell you, I find that refreshing, and thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all.
I do have a question.
Yes,
And it's
ma'am.
really more for the city manager. He's probably so tired of me saying this, he hears it behind the closed doors all the time. So are any of these projects, and I'm really specifically asking about the solar on the parking garage, is that something that we could look at grants for? And when I had that thought, the larger epiphany came over me, and that is, of course, I know our grant writer looks at everything police and fire and engineering. Would she know to look for something like okay.
And in that example,
that's
we
a
have-
little nod. He's
and-
giving me a little nod.
And in that, she would, and also so that you're aware, Eddie's been aware with that, and he's aware with that, because those are old puppies. Those are significantly older than the ones out back. And the functioning and the value add today is almost nil.
And there's abilities, and there are grants available for things
So-
like that. Don't know if we'll get them, but they're available.
So he's had a couple of folks that have come out and evaluated and tied back to potential opportunities.
When
And
they looked at them, did they go,
big ticket monies if we go and purchase. And years ago with old RDA monies back in, around the turn of the century in '03 is when we actually had, through Honeywell and SunTrust, and we actually had a 10-year deal with them way back when with respect to, and we were able to secure those through the old redevelopment agency. And that's how those original ones came about. But
Thank
their
you.
value add is gone.
they're worth nothing. They're a liability. We have to pay to take them down. But thank you. I appreciate everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. I guess I always need glasses. I don't know why I hesitate.
I guess there's really no summary needed on that one, other than the items that were indicated as for future funding you will see through the upcoming budget process.
And do we
Mayor
have
Ross,
any members
we
of the
have no
public?
request to speak at this time.
Thank you so much. So that is my phone. How bad of me. I thought I had it turned off, but it's going to be off now. And of all things, it's my husband who knows where I am. What is he calling about? All right, so we're moving on to Tropical Storm Hillary FEMA status update. City Manager, please.
Thank you. This is a presentation that will summarize everything that's been happening ever since August of 2023 up to the present in terms of our interactions with FEMA to make sure that we submit what is needed by them to get reimbursed for the costs that are eligible. Rick Vogt from our finance department, and I guess probably I stole Kevin, he was probably going to introduce him, but has prepared the material and is going to give you the presentation.
So real briefly, just to give you a little bit of a heads up, Rick will tie back to the history of meetings and that type of thing, but just as a separate and aside, pretty much every Wednesday we meet with FEMA to review the status, and we even had a meeting this morning at 11 a.m. And we meet with the FEMA reps. And so Rick, in coordination with, and keep in mind, he joined us in May, 3 months before Tropical Storm Hilary. And so soon thereafter, it was like, we need someone in finance that's going to have to be the primary focal point between engineering, between NAI, our vendor, with FEMA, and he's done a fantastic job with respect to that. So this is an opportunity for him to be able to go through and share with you where we've been and what we've done over the almost past year and a half. So on that note, I'm going to exit stage left.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm done with this limit.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'd like to present to you the FEMA status update for Tropical Storm Hilary. Back in August of 2023, the City Council adopted a resolution ratifying the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to Tropical Storm Hilary. On September 13th of 2023, the City Council authorized $1,062,000 from the general fund for Phase 1 emergency response work for debris removal and for emergency protective measures. Then on September 27th of 2023, the City Council authorized $3,967,967 plus 15% contingency from the general fund for Phase 1 emergency response work for soil removal. On October 11th, 2023, the City Council approved a resolution continuing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to Tropical Storm Hilary, and then on November 21st, California Hurricane Hilary is declared as a major disaster by President Biden, with the incident period cited specifically as August 19th, 2023 to August 21st, 2023. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, assigns the code DR for Disaster Relief 4750CA for California to the disaster declaration. On November 29, 2023, the City Council approved a resolution continuing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to Tropical Storm Hilary. On December 7th of 2023, staff from the City of Cathedral City attended a FEMA applicant briefing for Eastern Riverside County, and that was held out in Indio. Then on December 19th, the City of Cathedral City submitted a request for public assistance to FEMA. In February of 2024, February 7th, staff from the city met with FEMA representatives assigned to our region during an exploratory call, and then on the 22nd, FEMA staff and city staff held a recovery scoping meeting where they discussed locations and damages caused by the storm. On February 28th, a week later, city staff began weekly meetings with a FEMA program delivery manager who assists in filing claims for costs related to damages caused by Tropical Storm Hilary. On March 15th of 2024, FEMA staff performed site inspections of damages caused by Tropical Storm Hilary. Then on March 27th, the City Council approved a contract with Petrochem Materials Innovation to supply and apply rubber emulsion aggregate slurry, or REAS, in 3 areas of the city, including the Panorama neighborhood streets affected by Tropical Storm Hilary. The approved amount was $1,281,788, including the contingency. On April 10th of 2024, the City Council approved a contract with Hardy & Harper for pavement reconstruction in various sections of the Panorama neighborhood, all affected by Tropical Storm Hilary. The approved amount was $731,400, including the contingency. Then on June 26th of 2024, the City Council approved a contract with Conterra Construction for the removal of soil from the Ofelia Bringas Memorial Bridge grade control structure and the Date Palm Drive Bridge channel lining, both affected by Tropical Storm Hilary. The approved amount was $3,094,099.15, including the contingency. So I'd like to give you an overview of the structure in which FEMA has in place for us to make claims for costs. There are 4 basic components of FEMA public assistance eligibility. The first is there has to be an applicant identified. In this case, it's the City of Cathedral City, and we're considered a subrecipient under the State of California, or Cal-OES. And then that applicant must identify a facility for which they're responsible, and in this case, the City of Cathedral City is responsible for roads, bridges, parks. There's also work, and that work is a result of the declared incident in a designated area. And then there are costs associated with the work, and those must be documented and tied directly to what's called eligible work. They also have categories in which they want us to submit applications for claim recovery. The first category is for emergency work. It's category A, and that's just the debris removal. The second is category B, that's also emergency work. Those are the emergency protective measures. So that's the use of police and fire to protect the public, to keep the streets clear. It's also any costs associated with closing down streets or redirecting traffic during the emergency declaration. There's category C work, now that's permanent work, and that's worked on the roads. There's category D work, that's also permanent work. That has to do with any water control facility. So that would include the debris removal to access those water control facilities or the facilities under the bridges. There's a category E of permanent work for buildings and contents that did not apply to us. There's also category F work, and that's permanent work. It's for utilities. That also does not apply to us. And then there's category G work, permanent work, and that's for parks, recreational, or other. It's kind of the catch-all category if it doesn't fit A through F above. There's also something called category Z. That's for administrative costs to submit these claims, and those are any costs associated with preparing the applications. And so we'll be able to submit a category Z application to recover administrative costs up to a limit. So the way that the assistance is structured is that there's a federal share of the assistance, and that's at 75% of those costs that are deemed eligible. Then the state of California, they'll share 75 of that leftover 25%, which comes to an 18.75% of the total of the eligible costs. And then the City of Cathedral City is responsible for 6.25% of eligible costs. That's our match as a city. The exception to this is category Z costs are 100% federal share, and they're capped at a total of 5% of all the other categories obligated projects, what the total costs are for those. So now I'd like to go through the categories, kind of to let you know what was included in our applications to FEMA for these costs. The city submitted an application in August of 2024 for actual costs related to citywide debris removal. The types of costs we had were contract costs for vendors that helped us remove debris. We had force account labor, that's for our staff that was out and removing debris. We also have a force account equipment cost. That's when we use our own city-owned equipment to remove the debris. Then we also needed to rent equipment, so there's equipment rental costs. There are also costs to provide fuel to the equipment rental. Our own equipment, there is an hourly rate that includes any fuel or upkeep. However, with equipment rentals, we can submit the cost for the fuel to keep those equipment rentals running. And then there were other types of costs, such as meals, when we had to do some towing of some of our own vehicles, and also fuel additive that was needed for the equipment rentals. The total of the Category A debris removal cost came to $2,893,792. The current status of that $2,893,792 in claim costs is pending. FEMA staff are reviewing documentation after a series of requests for clarification and additional data. For Category B, which is the emergency protective measures, the city submitted an application in June of 2024 to reimburse us for actual costs related to citywide emergency protective measures. Contracts, force account labor, force account or city-owned equipment. We also had materials related to this. This would be when we needed to purchase barricades or other equipment to redirect traffic. And then there was also other costs such as food and drink for emergency responders. The total for Category B emergency protective measures was $152,007. Just as a side note, for force account labor, they don't reimburse us for all of fire and police during that time, only the overtime when they were responding to the storm. The current status of the $152,007 in claim costs is obligated. So they've pretty much approved those costs, and we're just waiting for a check to be dispersed. So they've completed the review and obligated the funds to the state of California, and we're just waiting for Cal OES to send us a check. So category C are the roads. So during an initial assessment in December of 2023, the city identified 11 road repairs due to Tropical Storm Hilary, and you can see those listed there in alphabetical order: Adelina Road, Avenida La Vista, Duval Drive, Date Palm Drive, Horizon Road, Los Gatos Road, Panorama Road, Tortuga Road, Varner Road, and Vistachino Road, as well as some alleys near Date Palm and Vistachino. I would like to say that when FEMA was looking at these roads, Horizon Road was divided into 3 parts by FEMA to address 3 different types of damage. So you're going to see Horizon listed 3 different times in this presentation. And the alleys specifically are the north-south alley off of Adelina Road, and there's also an east-west alley off of Horizon Road just below Vistachino. So those are the 2 alleys that were identified by FEMA. The city submitted 2 applications in November 2024 to reimburse actual costs related to 4 road repairs. So we were able to submit a project in the amount of $110,961, and that covered Avenida La Vista, Adelina Road, and then the curb and gutter that's on Horizon Road at Adelina. So FEMA grouped those together and said, you can submit those costs right now. And then they later came in and said, now you can submit the cost for Horizon Road, but just north of Adelina. And that came to $22,544. So those 2 together are $133,505. The status of those is still pending. They're still reviewing our claims, and those claims included costs, the RIAS costs from Petrochemicals Materials Innovation on Adelina Road and Avenida La Vista, and then reconstruction costs from Harding Harper, and that was on the north section of Horizon Road and that curb at Adelina. So the costs that we submitted were both RIAS costs and recon costs. We continue to work with FEMA on costs estimated at $640,208 for repairing the 7 other remaining road locations affected by Tropical Storm Hilary. These roads are under review with FEMA. There are eligibility concerns being addressed by our Public Works and Engineering Department. So the 11 road locations we had earlier, because they divided Horizon into 3, and we're also identifying 2 specific alleyways, becomes 14 road locations that we can give you the status on. Adelina Road and Avenida La Vista are both submitted. Duval Drive is yet to be submitted. Date Palm Drive is not a FEMA eligible road. It's going to be, any damage to that is going to be covered by FHWA, which is another government organization. Horizon Road, the curb at Adelina, that was submitted. Horizon Road north of Adelina, that was submitted. South of Adelina at Horizon Road, that's yet to be submitted. Los Gatos Road is yet to be submitted, as well as Panorama Road and Tortuga Road. Varner Road, there were no costs to claim, and by the way, that's also an FHWA road anyway. Vistachino Road is an FHWA road, so that's not going to be covered by FEMA. And then we have the north-south alley and the east-west alley off of Horizon Road, north-south alley off of Adelina, east-west alley off of Horizon, and those are yet to be submitted. So moving on to the next category, Category D. This is the category related to bridges and water control structures. The city submitted an application in December, so just last month, for costs related to the debris removal under the Fila Bringas Memorial Bridge and the regrading that needed to happen under Date Palm Drive Bridge, and as well as we had costs associated with permits. So the total amount for those items was $1,603,049. And the current status of those claim costs is pending. The FEMA staff have received the documentation, and the application is in the review process. Finally, we have Category G. The city submitted an application in April 2024 to reimburse actual costs related to citywide repair of parks and fencing. We had Ocotillo Park had some landscape repair. Century Park baseball field had some restoration issues after the storm. And then we also had the perimeter fence along Duval Drive that needed to be repaired and some sections replaced. The total of those costs are $28,670. And the current status of that is obligated. FEMA staff completed the review and obligated funds to the state of California, and we did receive those funds from Cal OES in late December of 2024. So here's a summary of all the categories, as well as the costs that we have submitted. what the anticipated FEMA portion would be, as well as the Cal OES portion, as well as the Cathedral City portion. Keep in mind, if it's not been obligated, they're still estimated or anticipated costs. We have to have FEMA approve them and obligate them to know for sure that we would receive the FEMA portion and Cal OES portion. The total of the submitted cost is $5,051,574. That does include an estimate in administrative costs of $240,551. There is also other costs related to the other roads yet to be submitted that is estimated at $640,280. So in summary, just to recap, once a project is obligated, Cal OES estimates it can be up to 3 months to process reimbursement. Cal OES sends the FEMA and Cal OES portions separately. We can expect Category B funds of $142,506 in this fiscal year. And as stated, Category G funds of $26,878, those funds have been received. The receipt of additional funds for the other categories or the timing of such reimbursements cannot be determined at this time. We're still waiting on FEMA to provide the final decision and to obligate the funds. Staff continues to work with FEMA to provide any clarification or provide any additional information that they request. This aligns with our 5-year strategic plan of continuing in community investment. And this report was for information and discussion purposes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gregory. Oh, you were up here. All right. Gentlemen? No, because we're on the other item, that's why. Councilmember Carnavale.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I was just talking to Charlie and Ann about FEMA, how experienced we are here at the city with the rules and regulations, and I got to tell you, I'm really impressed. So, but a couple questions on admin costs. Could you explain what it involved as admin costs? Is that overtime or?
No, that's basically my time to prepare these applications. So we don't report my time or anyone, staff member's time that's not directly doing the work. So it could be my time, it could be Kevin's time that I can report to FEMA. It's also assistance from NAI. It could also be legal costs.
Okay.
So these are like overhead costs in preparing the applications.
Okay, so overtime for police and fire.
That was submitted with the Category B
Okay.
emergency protective measures.
All right, thank you. And the last question would be, there was an issue with mud that we took off, I believe it was Date Palm, and we put it on Lloyd Casman properties. Is that another area where we build? Are you familiar with that? We put some mud on private property, and we compensated him for that, so I was wondering if we're going to get...
That's in that soil removal.
That's all in there too? Okay, perfect, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
It's okay. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I wish you had categories all the way through C. But you didn't talk about at all about, or I don't know if you have any information regarding DAPOM.
DAPOM, early in the process, DAPOM was, based on the classification from the Federal Highway Administration, is not considered FEMA eligible. FEMA only covers really local roads. I don't know if engineering wants to give any information about DAPOM.
Good afternoon again. The two roads that were affected by Tropical Storm Hillary that are related to the Federal Highway Administration are Vista Chino and Daypalm. The city received approval from the Federal Highway Administration on the estimated damages, the same percentage that Rick was showing you about FEMA, 75%, plus then Cal OES putting the 75% of the 25% will apply to those projects. Vista Chino is the section from Date Palm to a little passing Horizon Road. That's what the Federal Highway Administration is going to cover. And then Date Palm, they are going to cover from Vista Chino to 300 or 200 feet passing Los Gatos. Those are the affected areas from FEMA. Vista Chino, we are going to do it on house. The engineering department have just submitted the preliminary environmental report to Caltrans. Once that get approved, I think that I need to send a letter to Caltrans that we don't need right of way and no environmental issues are involved in that project. And as soon as I receive the approval for construction for Caltrans, we are going to put the project to bid immediately. Date Palm, I think I understand that because of the surrounding areas, commercial in one side and tribal land in the east side, we are going to have to follow the NEPA process, that is environmental studies. That will take longer than Vista Chino. And that's why we are in the process of hiring a consultant for the design of Date Palm. And I think we're going to try to include the part that is federal highway funded with additional funding just to get to 30th Avenue and do the complete project. The only problem with that is that the entire project need to comply with federal regulations. That's the update that I have.
Thank you, great news.
Councilmember Carlos?
No, I'm good.
I think you're off the hook.
Okay,
How
great.
about that?
All right, thank you.
And not too late in the day either. Do we have any comments from?
Mayor, we have no request to speak at this time.
Thank you so much. This is for presentation only. There's no formal action, and we will receive recess until 5:30, please. And look, we already have this.